Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Godstrike, a twin-stick boss rush shoot 'em up. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From Overpowered Team and Freedom Games, Godstrike released for the PC via Steam and the Nintendo Switch, which is the version we're looking at today, in mid-April. So as I mentioned, this one is a twin-stick boss rush. So basically we're going to be fighting all these bosses using a twin-stick control scheme, which I love. So on paper, this one sounds like an awesome experience, but the execution isn't quite where it needs to be. And the trailers for this was also like one of those things that made me say, yeah, I really want to play that. But at the end of the day, the game has a high difficulty that makes it kind of frustrating, and sometimes that's not the kind of experience you're looking for. So this is one that I'm really mixed on recommending. But I'll get back to that later. So here we find ourselves at the main menu, and there are 4 different modes we can play the game in. There's the arena mode, which allows you to have access to basically the entire game. You have access to all 40 abilities that are in the game, as well as all 10 bosses. So this is what you'd want to play if you're looking to experience everything. Story mode takes you through a more curated take on the game itself, where you fight each boss individually with our heroine here, Talala. And it's decent to play the game through if you're finding it more difficult, because if you fail on a boss enough, and I know that's kind of a bad way to make it sound, you'll get an easier version of the boss fight. Daily challenge, you have one chance to fight a boss using the abilities the game gives you, and that's going to be really hard to clear any of those, as the game itself is hard. And I almost did it for today's daily challenge, but ultimately died in the end. Challenge mode is a roguelite mode where you'll be given certain abilities and extra passives that aren't present in the other modes of the game, say for the daily challenge, to play through and give you that roguelite experience. So that might be, for some people, the mode they would want to play the game in, but I would recommend getting familiarized with the bosses first. So diving into arena mode, we're taken to the game's hub, and I want you to take a quick second to note that big blue bar at the top of the screen and the time below it. So that is our time, and the time is your most important resource in this game. It's both your life as well as currency for equipping skills. So there are 2 books here, the Occult Codex and the Arcane Codex. But before we go into those, up here is where we start our boss fights, but in the arena mode, as I mentioned, we have access to all the bosses. So as we cycle through the bosses, the time that you have for each boss fight is different. So that's something to keep in mind. Remember, time is our resource. Let's go into the Arcane Codex. Out of the 40 abilities we have, these 20 I want to call the skills, because these are the ones that are going to be active. And there's different abilities, like the one we have selected here, the Herald Step. This is basically our dash. You can see the name over here on the right with the cost below it, and that cost 15 seconds. If we were to select this, it takes away 15 seconds from our total timer, our total life. That's something really important. Below that cost, we have that burning blue flame and a 1. So each of these skills has a soul cost associated with it. As we damage the enemies, they'll drop souls, and those souls we use to activate these skills. So for this first boss, I'm going to take the Overload skill here with a cost of 25 seconds and a soul cost of 5. For a shorter period of time, Talala shoots projectiles in a cone of 4. So it basically takes our shot from 1 to a spread shot with 4 bullets in it. I do like that. It is a little bit tricky to equip these. We can equip up to 4 of them, and to equip it, cursor over the skill you want, and then you press the button you want to assign that one to. Same thing to unequip it if it's you're not just swapping abilities. So that is a little tricky. Moving to the other side, for the Cult Codex, so here we have another set of 20 abilities. These are our upgrades, the passives. So as the other one, these ones are all kind of color-coded. So you've got some that are red. Those ones are usually damage-oriented. Some that are purple. Those involve shields. Blue, or not shields, souls. Blue is basically your defense, and green will largely relate to time. So I'm going to put together a bit of a defensive build, just so I can more easily stay alive and show you the game itself. But some of the things that are really useful, so the soul ones, are like this Reaper, for example, forces the enemies to drop more souls. Souls are what we use to activate our skills. We want souls. And there's also the really useful Void, which sucks in souls. But another thing I find is really useful is dealing more damage. The fire rate increase here is really important. In addition, faster than light, that allows us to dodge around the enemies. I do really like this spiked boy. It's this orbital that will circle around us, absorbing any shots that happen to hit it. So it's a great defensive item, better than some of the other ones, in my opinion, with the time I've spent with the game. And then stand-up time, this will give us an extra 30 seconds, which basically, if we're looking at our time as our life, just an extra 30 points of life. All that taken care of, we come up here and we start our fight. So I love the name of the first boss here, but before we get to it, ultimately it is me. I am the last herald. So we're fighting these heralds, and we're kind of fused with a herald, but I'm not sure who ultimately is basically saying this phrase here. I'm assuming it's us, but I'm not certain. And that's kind of how you experience the story, is through these. But our boss here is Tutorial, which is a wonderful name. So right off the bat, you can see we've got bullet hell-like patterns. We're going to select these blue fire or orbs that he's dropping. Those are the souls, and this will ultimately allow us to activate our ability. So there are several different attacks that he has. That was kind of clumsy of me. As we take damage, you'll see that there's like a time that's deducted from our time bar at the top of the screen. We're going to activate our ability to try and end this phase quickly. And for every life bar you deplete of the boss, you basically move them into another phase. And you can tell how many life bars there are, because underneath their name and their life bar there are these cubes, and that will tell you how many life bars we need to take out to defeat this boss. So now in this particular part of the phase, Tutorial will chase around after us, and as he spikes the ground, he sends out these wave of bullets. Fairly easy to dodge around if you know the pattern. And in addition to this laser, he can send out a bullet wave, kind of like he did at the very beginning of the fight. Now, as this fight will progress, he will move into another phase. There are some elements of this fight that can actually get frustrating. So the stage itself has these little outcroppings that it's possible to get like caught between him and those outcroppings, and that's just not great. So we're just about to the latter part of the fight, and here he'll move to the center of the screen and surround himself with all these rocks. These rocks act as shields, so we need to take them out. In addition to that, he'll also be sending these like beams of light from above. So we're going to open up ourselves a nice little clearing among his rocks, get in there, finish that wave of the fight. So we find ourselves at our final wave of the fight, and one thing that's important to note is that we need to have a decent amount of time on our time bar. So he's got a couple different attacks he can send our way, like these rocks that he sends out in a pattern. He can also send them out in a wall pattern, and there's also these bolts from above that he sends our way in addition to the charge. So time is everything. If we don't have enough time left to defeat him, then we'll end up in a zero time situation, and when your timer hits zero, you're not dead yet. What happens at that point is the screen kind of grows gray, and you have basically, you can still defeat the boss just as long as you don't take any more hits. Basically, you have one more hit to finish the boss fight in, or one more life, I guess is a better way to look at it. So once we defeat the boss, we're taken back to the hub, And here we can choose to equip a different set of equipment. For this, I'm going to unequip the Overload, and we're going to go with Celestial Stasis. This is one that I really like for a lot of the bosses, as it's low cost. It only takes 2 souls to activate and can deal quite a bit of damage. It unleashes a torrent of shots, locking the shooting direction. What that basically means is that, so say we're facing straight up, then we would be locked in that direction. Oh, there was one thing I forgot to mention, was this target dummy here. You can activate this target dummy to practice on if you want. So back up here, we're going to move on to our second boss, and I'll show you off some things about this fight. This one I actually like quite a bit. We believed it. We thought that by bringing them back, we could be better. We could last. We were blind. Now I am not even me. Kalepo! So Kalepo here is this totem that's in the center of the screen, and he's got 4 phases to him, which is pretty neat. There's some graphical cues that kind of hint at that. There's 4 levels to the totem, so 4 phases kind of makes perfect sense. I'm going to try and collect a few souls here, doing so clumsily, taking some hits to show off the Celestial Stasis. It's a really great attack, but unfortunately you have to be careful with the direction that you set it off in, as if you whiff, that's going to hurt. So the first couple phases of this fight are pretty easy. The third phase I happen to like quite a bit though, so that's what we're trying to get to show off. And then the final phase is kind of a more crazy version of the first phase of this fight. So we'll kind of show something else off at that point. But I like the graphical detail that this game happens to have. So the look is interesting. It's kind of got an old world feel to it, and which I know is common enough, but I think this is really well done. So this is the part of the fight that I really like. You've got those 2 walls rotating around, and then every once in a while we have these wave of bullets that come out. Because of the wall, we can't hold a position though. The wave of bullets comes out and then it gets sucked back in. So in order to survive, we have to kind of dodge around the bullets and wait for them to get sucked back in, but not get hit by the wall. It's a really neat fight that, while frustrating the first few times, I found myself quite enjoying this particular phase as I became more experienced with this fight. I'm not looking so hot on this one. And our Spiked Boy doing some good work, just taking care of various... Oh, so that's what the game looks like when you get down to 0 time. And if you get hit again, bam, my time is over. Spiked Boy doing some great work there, taking out some shots for me passively. So that's basically what we have here in Godstrike. So with a lot of time spent on the bosses and learning which passives as well as which abilities work for you, I think you could get really good at this game and have a lot of fun with it. But at the end of the day, it's kind of one that just feels like there are a couple bosses in particular that just feel really frustrating, to the point where I'm not sure I can really recommend this for anybody but the most hardcore fans of bullet hell shoot 'em ups looking for a challenge. It does have some really neat visual elements to it though, so as I was mentioning. So this fight in particular I really like, against this guy, the Sindeal. So he's this dude wielding a green spear, and this arena is surrounded by green spears. But what I love about it is as we approach the spheres, they all point towards us. This fight itself is kind of crazy though. He's basically like the 9th boss, so he'd be your second to last one in story, and he's definitely a decent challenge, especially if you don't know his patterns super well, which at this point I haven't learned them all that well at this point. But I just loved the way that this stage looks, and it just has a bunch of graphical elements like that. So there we have it. Godstrike served up for your enjoyment. The minus flavors, so the game itself, I didn't mean to select this one again. So the game itself is brutally difficult. It's going to take a lot of time learning all the bosses' attacks and patterns to get really proficient at them, and you're going to be dying a lot. And if you're okay with that and you're not going to get super frustrated with that, then maybe this is a game you'd be interested in. And that said, I can recommend it off of its initial, I believe at least the first week it's 20% off on both Steam and the Nintendo eShop, so that's something to keep in mind. But in addition to its brutality, so I don't like the fact that the dodge is a skill you have to, well, I'd be fine if it was one you had to equip, so you could choose to have the dodge on or not. But having it have a soul cost I think really cheapens the effect, as you're not going to be able to use a dodge like you would in most games of this variety unless you have it charged up. So there's that and its difficulty as a complaint. As far as the plus side is concerned, I really like how innovative all these boss fights are, and they all feel very different. None of them are exactly the same. So against Dracula here, we start by fighting like a beating rib cage, and then once we destroy that phase, then we have this crazy skull that wants us dead something fierce. We're gonna throw some spears at him, do some good damage, but the fights themselves can be quite difficult, but they're satisfying, and I like what they've done with the time bar, where it ultimately if we have less skills activated and available to us, then we have more time, more health, but at the same time it's not as easy to deal as much damage to the bosses themselves. So, at the end, I'm mixed on this one. This game isn't for everybody, but for certain people, it might be exactly what they're looking for. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.